The Heresy Accountabilibuddies Podcast is dedicated to all things Horus Heresy. This podcast delves into the grimdark universe where Primarchs clash, legions rise, and loyalties fracture faster than a Land Raider's track. But it's not just about the lore of the Horus Heresy. The Accountabilibuddies also explore the gaming side of things, from painting and modeling tips to product reviews and ideas to help you in your hobby. So, whether you're a seasoned Forge World veteran or a fresh-faced scout, this podcast is your Vox channel to the galaxy. Expect discussions on lore, modeling, gaming, and maybe even the shenanigans that your hosts somehow seem to find their way into. Remember, in the grim darkness of the far future, there are only two things you can count on: heresy and your trusty Accountabilibuddies.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Heresy Accountabilibuddies Podcast, episode 96. I, as always, am one of your hosts. My name is Duncan, and I'm joined tonight by my co-hosts,
Dan,
Jack,
Jamie,
and John.
And tonight we have two very special guests all the way from across the Atlantic Ocean. We have...
Hello, I'm Danny Fortuna, also known as the Pontius on YouTube, and with me there is my co-host for the video, Pio Vinoi, also known as Pio.
Send
Say hi, Pio. Yeah, the first phrase he ever said in the trailer, send help.
I am the Pio.
You are the Pio, huh? Well,
Yeah.
it's good to have you all here. We will be talking a lot about lore tonight for Heresy and things surrounding it. But before we get to that, let's go ahead and throw our sponsors up there and say thank you to them and thank you to all our patrons.
Do you love resin bases? Then go to our sponsor Elric Hobbies for all of your basing and basing accessory needs. Use code HeresyABB at checkout for a discount. Legendary Monument Hobbies. Monument Hobbies is a one-stop shop for all of your painting needs. Use code HeresyABB at checkout for a 5% discount on your purchase. Pop Goes the Monkey. Find maker of third-party accessory bits of arms, legs, backpacks, and more, where you can get 10% off your first order over $125 with code HeresyABB at checkout.
And now that we're back from that, John, I believe we have a fairly hefty amount of news, right?
Absolutely. So, before we jump into news, I've got a couple of quick announcements. So, last time we talked a little bit about some of the stuff that I got up to at Texas Open, talking to a couple of people there. So, the first guy I talked to on Instagram is named Militarum Murphy. Some of you may have seen where he takes the military-industrial complex companies, Raytheon, Triquint, Boeing, all those different companies that make all the weapons of war, and 40K-izes them. So you can see Tigris Instruments, and he's got Russ's. He's got trying to find another one. He posts a lot of memes, so excuse me while I scroll through 9,000 memes. Triplex and Fall instead of H and K. So
Okay.
just a bunch of different jokes. Anyway, it was nice running into him there, but one of the main reasons that I'm bringing him up is he gave us permission to print his posters and use them in the terrain that we're going to be giving away to Blake that won our terrain contest last year.
Oh, nice.
Oh, nice.
So I will be making those posters. I've got a document that I'm working on right now, and I'll be going through in a video as well that I'll get Jack to edit. Surprise, Jack, about how to make posters and how to put those on terrain and how to do all that stuff.
Sounds good.
That was one of the people I ran into. The other people I ran into is someone who's been kind of hitting a lot of local contests. It's a company called Rex's Lasers, and they do a lot of acrylic tokens. They do a lot of movement trays and things like that. Pretty much anything that can be done with a laser. And about 2 or 3 years ago, they came to Warzone Houston, and they made this really cool movement tray that fit inside of the rolling cart that everyone has at Adepticon. And I brought that home because I was using it to move my Cobra-themed militia army from table to table without having to move the whole display board and everything. And Christina had made me this kind of overlay sticker on the bottom that looked like a Cobra logo and my name and things like that. Turns out they had some issues with the display board breaking on the edges, and so they completely redesigned the whole thing, and they were reselling it. And I came up and I said, hey, I hate to bring this up, but is there any way I can get, replacements because mine broke? And told the lady, hey, my wife designed this, and she's, not here anymore to design a new one. And she said, yeah, no problem. And then took my address and shipped me a whole new set of edges. I didn't have to pay shipping. I didn't have to pay what the wood costs, anything. So if you see them, or if you find them online, just Google Rex's Lasers. They make a whole bunch of really cool acrylic stuff, and their customer support is definitely top notch. So
I've been
I
seeing
definitely
them
think that
pop
they
up on my people I might know on Facebook for a while, so I'll probably go ahead and send them a request.
Yeah, that's very cool.
They're really cool
very
people.
Cool.
Yeah. But now that we've got all the sappy stuff and cool people out of the way, let's talk about what's coming in the news. So one of the main things that was announced this week that Jack and I definitely had a happy high five over was Joy Toy. We finally got reveal of the Mark 6 and Mark 3 and a Praetor for Ultramarines and Joy Toy scale. And so the Mark 3s, we got a Sergeant with a power sword and a bolt pistol, as well as a heavy bolter Marine. For Mark 6, this is a little different. There's a Sergeant with a power sword and plasma pistol, and then a Marine with a bolter and a chain bayonet. What's really cool, though, is both of these Mark 6 Marines come with two heads. One of the heads on each figure is the exclusive Forge World head. So there's a big U on the normal Tactical Marine, and then the big Ultramarine's crest on the Sergeant. And so you get that head, and then you get a normal head that comes in the tactical squads. You get just a normal beaky head for the Tactical Marine, and then a kind of a blander looking helmet that's just painted with a white stripe for the Sergeant. The Praetor is the kind of gold super decked out Praetor that we're used to with the Volkite pistol and the power sword. And then Banner, he's the one that's got all the gold trimmings everywhere. But definitely a really cool figure. He also comes with two heads, one helmetless and then one that's helmeted.
I need to replace his Volkite pistol with a Thunderhammer. That way I can have a mini Praetor and a bigger Praetor. So bad. So bad. I need that so much. Excuse me as I'm making my dinosaur noises with my giant Praetor at the table.
Okay, so it's just going to be you and John at Adepticon playing bigger Heresy.
Rawr!
I mean, because no one else is going to have them.
It's awesome. Not just bigger Heresy, sir. We came up with a name for it already.
Oh, did we? What was it again?
So, we're going with Pimp Scale. Posable Imperialis Majoris Play Scale. Pimp Scale.
Oh, my Lord. Okay, what else do we have in the news?
I bet there's Barbie fur coats that would fit those models, too.
Well, you don't even have to do that, Dan, because someone has already made replacement cloth banners and everything for them, so you don't even have to look that far. Yes. All right, so nothing has come out from Merchoid. Nothing came out from Skullforged. The other thing that we saw this week was the official GW coming next Sunday drop. We've got a couple more releases that are going to be Heresy adjacent. So they're re-releasing a lot of the old Kill Team terrain. So the interior one, as well as the like a oil derrick thing that's coming back out as well. And then also the plushies are coming out. I know Dan had talked about wanting to get the Squig or the Sassy Nurgling.
Sassy Nurgling, it's pretty funny.
Yeah, I want to get the Servo Skull.
Yeah. I'm kind of partial to Watcher in the Dark, though, too. There's three of them I kind of want. The purple skull thingy, what's that from? Is that Age of Sigmar?
It's from Old Fantasy. It's the Purple Sun.
Okay.
I remember that spell. Jeez,
yeah.
Old.
Yeah, that was 7th and 8th edition.
It was before that. I remember casting that spell in games in like '92.
Yeah, I thought it was
Yeah,
really early.
in 7th and 8th, it went crazy. It became a large template, and anything it crossed it could kill the whole unit, even if it barely touched it.
Yes, if it crossed it, you vanished. Pretty much no save. Fall off the table. Gone.
If you remember casting that spell in '92, that means you're probably a nerd.
Yeah, I know. It's all right. I'll get over it. So what else we have? Anything else?
That's really it. I know a lot of the guys that were on Wednesday night, so we do our Wednesday night hangouts, and a lot of the guys there were already kind of starting to get into Space Marine, and so I'd like to remind anybody that wants to join up that we have Space Marine channels in our Discord to look for people that are wanting to do the missions or wanting to do PvP. And then we've also got our contest. And since we're on 97 this episode, we're just a couple episodes away. 96.
96 numbers are hard.
So before episode 99, all anyone has to do is come join our Discord and post in our contest channel what your favorite part of the podcast is. And that will enter you into a drawing to win the End of the Death Volume 3 Collector's Edition, which is the signed leatherback edition of the last book in the Heresy series.
Yep. One thing I need to put out there is that we do have, we've got finals of the new posters that we are doing this year. We do have the final artwork on those. We will be getting those onto t-shirts, hoodies, and posters for people. Those will be coming and available, I believe, sometime during October once we get the store reset and everything for that.
And if you watch our Instagram, as I post the pictures of the posters and everything that I'm working on terrain, you may see sneak peeks.
Yes, they may.
Don't the what do you call it? The patron members also have seen them.
Yes, the patron members have seen them, and actually, one of the posters, the patron members actually helped very much in getting designed, because that is kind of what the patrons get to do. One of the rewards. And we have very, very reasonable patron tiers. I think our cheapest one is $1, if not free. So anyone who might be interested in patron stuff, hop on in there. But I think that's all the news we have. Is that about right, John?
Absolutely. Do we want to go into hobby?
Let's head over to hobby. Why don't you take us off there as well?
All right. So I'll admit, Con Crud kind of cleared me out after Texas Open, and so I was a little slow to start last couple weeks. But this week I finally got into position, and I got the table finally sealed up, and so all the terrain. So there's three different sizes of buildings, and then each size gets 4 different types of buildings in it. So you get 4 large, 4 small, or 4 medium, and 4 small buildings. So I've had those all painted up before. This week I sealed them, since the paint that I use is a little finicky. Trying to go through my backlog of paints and just trying to get rid of it. And then after I got everything sealed up, I let it dry for a couple days, and then I went through and added Payne's Gray as a shadow onto everything. And so since these are blown up buildings, they've got a lot of shadows in the corners and all the different blown out areas. That is all that terrain is now painted up. It's just basically waiting for me to catch up with some of the other kind of add-on stuff that I wanted to add. Like I said a couple episodes ago, one of my friends was wanting to try out kind of carving in the word bearer kind of sketchy designs, the carved in designs on a Contemptor Dreadnought. I just gave him a Contemptor that I'd cast a long time ago, and he was going around with that. I took that and then blew it up a little bit more and threw in some other kind of statue debris that I had and made some scatter terrain to go with the table. And then I took one of the Joy Toy figures I'd bought on Prime Day sale and turned that into kind of like a big centerpiece for the table. And so now I think I've got kind of everything built up the way I want it. And so now I just need to prime those last couple of scatter pieces. And then I can start moving into, again, adding those posters from our podcast, as well as the Militar Murphy. And then also going in, adding some pastels and things like that, get everything weathered up. My hope is to have this thing shipped and in Blake's hands before October.
Nice.
And then on my personal stuff, a couple weeks ago, I started working on some of the Velataris for my militia. And so I've been using the back conversions I did from G.I. Joe, but I wanted some of the rotor cannon guys, and so I ordered some Anvil Industries rotor cannons, and I started building up a squad of 20 of those. And I've kind of clipped out all the cannons now, and I'm just putting them together while we talk tonight. I also found on Etsy someone had 3D sculpted some of the other Cobra characters I didn't have. So there's a Baroness with a pair of Uzis, a different Storm Shadow, a Cobra Commander, and then someone had even done Globulus from the old 80s movie. And so I picked up those figures, and so now they're on my priming table. I figured they'd be kind of neat, just characters and stuff like that, whenever I need just a bunch of random extra people for scoring units and things.
Okay.
But that's pretty much everything for me, other than doing some around the house cleaning. I built 6 shelves for my storage unit, so I'm going to try to organize that a little bit better, so I'm not having to go through every box every time I'm looking for something. What about Jamie? What'd you get done?
So this week, I actually been hobbying a decent amount. I know there was a couple nights I was up with Duncan and I guess Brian putting stuff together, and on the hobby hangout, on our normal Wednesday night hobby hangout, even though John forgot me on the post about it. Let's see. So I've been working on the charity army, and I've built two of the tactical squads. I've built all the HQs except for the chaplain on the jet bike. I've done the speeders. Currently, I'm actually on my workbench. I'm started just before we started recording. I'm building a Rhino and a new Land Raider for the army, and I'm just going through trying to knock out as much of it as I can, and then kind of prime and batch paint it all, and you get the base colors down on everything, and then work everything up at one by one. So that's what I've been doing. I've been fairly busy. It's been raining a lot here because of the hurricane/tropical storm that came through, and haven't had a whole lot of soccer this week because of it. So, anyways, how about Jack?
Dan, why don't you tell us what you've been up to?
I have not been hobbying. I've been running a D&D game, and most of my spare time has been doing that. But I am writing lists because I have to remember how to play, because I will be at Michigan GT this coming weekend. And so I am hoping that actually playing some games will get my hobby mojo a little back in gear, and I will have some hobby moving forward. So that's kind of where I am at. So who hasn't gone yet?
Me. Duncan.
Right. Duncan,
All right.
how about?
Well, other than minimal blood effects for 30 World Eater Rampagers, those guys are now done. So I got another 30 guys final assembled and put on corks so I can get them painted. I've got them all base colored. 20 of them have already gotten the first layer of white down. I've got to get layers of white down on the next one so I can bump these up to 60 Rampagers. And then, because Jack is Jack, I will have to find a way to do another 60 Rampagers. And once I get done with the Rampagers, then I can start working on, I think it's 12 Land Raiders, because, Land Raiders.
You know what you did when you became my friend.
I do. Other than that, been working on a little bit of helping people with some lists, bringing people into the hobby, talking to them about how they can do stuff. Finding an absolutely abhorrent way that Alpha Legion can break a game on turn 1 that I don't really want to share, but I will probably end up sharing it sometime because it's ridiculous and overpowered, and it made my brain hurt. But it does involve deep striking, so I'll just leave it at that.
I'm intrigued now, but okay.
Okay, so really quick, Alfarius plus a stolen unit from the Space Wolves of their Terminators
Mm-hmm.
Inside of a Land Raider, using Alferez's rules can sorry, not a Land Raider, but using a Spartan, using Alferez's rules can deep strike the Spartan at turn 1 and charge turn 1. Yeah, so there. You can have like a giant...
Oh, that's horrible.
like a 1,500 point Death Star that you can just deep strike and destroy people with round 1 before they can do anything. Yeah, it's highly objectionable. I don't think it's working as intended, but technically the rules do allow it. So whoever's out there that plays Alpha Legion, please don't do that. GW, I know you don't listen and you won't care, but maybe do a FAQ. That'd be nice. Anyway.
Matt Ward wrote all about it in 5th edition and Blood Angels.
Okay, yeah, Matt Ward and flying Land Raiders. And, yeah, Dreads. Because Matt Ward.
I remember that in one of the books, but it was more of a crashing Land Raider. I think it's the...
Yeah, well, with the amount of Interceptor out there, it would be a crashing Land Raider.
There was the very popular and critically acclaimed A-Team movie.
Yeah, with the...
Yeah. But yeah, that's all my hobby stuff.
Fast and Furious, where they drop a tank out of a plane, too.
I don't know. I stopped watching those because
they're so believable.
Yeah, so believable. Anyway, Pio, Danny, I don't know if either of you all actually do miniature hobbies stuff. Do you?
Actually, in Italy, Warhammer is not big enough where we live to actually do hobby. I just paint to relax. Pio doesn't at all. I don't think he even collects models.
No, I don't.
Well, that's unfortunate.
I would love to, but I can't.
Yeah, okay. These things happen. I think we're done with news, and I think we're done with hobby. So let's move on to the meat and potatoes, as it were. Danny, you give us a little bit of background about yourself, if you would, before we move into everything.
Well, I am Danny Fortuna. I am the original creator of the either famous or infamous, on the base of how you look at it, a Facebook group called Warhammer 40k Heresy Posting that I created at this point, I think around 3 or 4 years ago, and it's been going pretty well so far. I am also the creator, writer, editor, everything else for the show of the Pontius, that is my YouTube channel where I work with Pio, with our narrator Julius, and additional characters when needed, like the editor that sometimes appears and speaks and such, to make 40k lore videos. And yeah, that is pretty much it without going too much into the backstory.
Okay. Pio?
Hi, I'm Pio. The only thing I do is co-host for the Pontius with Danny, and do subtitles for the channel as well.
Okay,
that's it.
Nope. You're a co-host. That works. I mean, he gets to pick on you, so that's all that counts, right?
When he's out of the basement, yeah. When he's in the basement, I just leave him there.
Well, okay. All right.
There's not much thing to do in the basement.
Well, considering my hobby room is in the basement for myself, I'll just leave it that way. I got a lot of stuff I have to do that I just never seem to get around to. But so Danny, you from what I've read and what you and I have talked about before, you actually taught yourself English for the express purpose of being able to read Warhammer books. Is that right?
Yes, this actually happened around 2019. I was a university student at the time and remained so for a couple of years more, even through COVID times and such. I was pretty much the entire story is that I was just traveling on the bus because the commute every week from home to university was a good 3.5 hours of bus, so I needed to entertain myself. I was already a big aficionado of war, we could say. I always liked big empires, made up or not, like the Roman Empire. You will never find an Italian that doesn't like the Roman Empire. But and pretty much what I found out when I found 40K was a universe that truly spoke to me on a personal level, where war is not only something that happens and is a tragedy, but is literally everything. It is survival, it is fighting for honor, it is fighting for hate. It had very many characters that interested me on a personal level, being that I like the poetry that there is behind war. Now, it is obviously a tragedy when a war starts because people die, things get destroyed, the lines of families end and such. I don't consider war a good thing, but I can still appreciate that there is a philosophy in war, and especially because I am a big fan of people that behave how they want to behave because they are not restricted by laws, and the only law is causality and chaos in a war. And there is also the saying from the Joker, but that is also very true. In their last moments, you see who people truly are. When I found out that there was a giant universe that relied and revolved all around conflict and war with various races and such, very deep backstory, and I found out probably in the stupidest way possible because at that time there was only the first 2 parts of Astartes out, so the trailer where they got onto the ship and then deployed and invaded the enemy ship. And from that, I was like, I watched those 2 videos. I was like, this is neat animation, but I remember those armors. Where did I saw them already? I went and checked, and I found out that I already seen them from the thumbnail of a review of the Ultimate Apocalypse mode for the First Dawn of War. I saw the mod. I saw all those war machines, people fighting each other, the Imperial Guard, the Astartes, the Chaos Marines, and I pretty much was instantly hooked. The only problem was that when you deal with anything in Italian, especially when it involves wikis, and it is not even something I'm doubting, it is a challenge. If you go and look in an Italian wiki and in an English wiki of the same thing, you will not find the same information. You will find out that the English one is a lot longer, a lot more detailed, better made, pretty much. So when I found out about this universe, but I also was wary of learning it in Italian and seeing how expensive and interesting it was for me, I decided, all right, it is time to learn English, to learn what the fuck this is. I'm curious. And from there I started watching Luatin. I didn't speak much English at the time, so I was with automatic subtitles on for how much those suck. But I could understand some phrases, some words. Then slowly I started understanding more and more and more. And in 6 months, I got the certification C2 level from the Italian government and European Union. And that is pretty much the master level of English you can attain in Europe. And with that, I started studying 40K a lot more deeply, started reading the books, consulting the wikis a lot more, switching between YouTubers I watched. Then I stopped watching YouTubers because I started seeing all the mistakes they were making, but that is another story. And yeah, that is pretty much the entire story. There is also to note that 40K came to me in a very dark period in my life where I was extremely depressed. So the moment I learned about this giant universe that had explanation even for how their guns were made worked, why they were cold in some ways, various bullets, drawings of how they were made, even there were even some explanation of chemical compositions of weapons because I was in university for chemistry and organic chemistry, so that was my main hookup point. Like I was just okay, done, sealed. Let's see what this is. If it is good, I might even start learning it deeper. And here we are, 5 years later.
That's like really amazing. Like just the time frame, because like I'm just thinking, like, I have younger children and having to teach them how to read English and stuff like that. It's like, even with them going to school multiple days, 5 days a week or whatever, it's taken them really to about 5th, 6th grade to get proficient enough to be able to read everything. And you basically become a master of the English language in 5 years.
Yeah, that's truly amazing to me as well. I mean, I'm sitting here 44 years old, and I have gone out of my way not to learn any other languages other than basic bits of profanity. And the fact that you basically taught yourself the English language to be able to read further wikis and everything because of Warhammer lore, that is a
Yeah,
level of dedication I could not aspire to.
at the time, I was 19 when I discovered 40k. It was the year I actually became 19, so now I'm 24, and it took me 6 months going from a few phrases of English to now, pretty much.
Damn. That's
My
honestly
pronunciation is
impressive.
still extremely shitty. My accent is something people get hypnotized a lot from, especially in the videos. I get a lot of jokes on that, but I laugh with them because without different Englishes from Italian, and this is a little backstory on on recording the Bad War parts. The names of some things required me like 20, 30 takes to get right. Like every time you hear in the Bad War Part 2 me saying the name, the Cartan Satrap Tanit Koenig, that took at least like half an hour to get right.
Yeah, I was the same way with a lot of the, especially because 40k draws on like everything. So you've got the was it Scottish for the ghost, and I was always pronouncing column, which is how you correctly pronounce it. I was always pronouncing it colm. And so when I met Dan Evans, I was like, oh yeah, I really like Colm. He's like, who the fuck is Colm? I was like, oh, I mean, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, that's not how you pronounce that name. And it wasn't until the audiobooks came out that I was like, oh, that's how you're supposed to say those words.
Yeah, it's definitely different.
Well,
Absolutely.
the only good thing of it is that being Italian, we are the closest language remaining to Latin. So 90% of the time, when you hear the pronunciation of a word from me that is actually derived or is Latin, you are hearing the most correct pronunciation left in a used language. So it is not pure Latin, because for that you need a university professor if possible. But yeah.
The few times that they actually do high Gothic and low Gothic, does that help?
Not really. There is not really a difference in 40k between low Gothic and high Gothic, for the simple fact that everything is translated in English in the end. So while in 40k they might speak two different versions of high and low Gothic, we always read the same kind of fucking English, so it doesn't change anything.
Yeah, I know in Eisenhorn there was the time when he was talking to, it was like a prostitute in low Gothic, and then he was having to translate into high Gothic for the our beats that were next to him and things like that. So I didn't know if that was closer to being less pidgin English.
It depends. Gothic as a language, like they call it Gothic, but it's not really a Gothic language. Gothic is pretty much a mixture in the 40k universe, low and high Gothic, of English mixed with Latin mixed with French. So it is a chimera of languages, and containing a shitty one because there is French in it. So
it's kind of like Romansh, is it not? Or
not really.
No.
The Romance language rely. When you take any language that is derived from Latin, you have to think Spanish in various ways. It's pretty much always the same language. Like even between Italian and Spanish, Italian and Portuguese and such, we might not communicate efficiently, but the words are so similar to say the same things that even if we don't understand exactly what we're saying, we can get the bigger picture even without knowing the language the other person is speaking.
Gotcha.
So it is pretty much the most similar branch of language, but French is not derived from the Romance language. So
Okay, it's definitely an interesting thing. I did not know that about French. So, beyond that, so what is that? I'm not quite certain how to ask this, but what part of 40K was it that you first encountered? Was it a book or what was it?
The first video I actually encountered, funnily enough, was Luetin's video on, if I remember right, because I don't exactly remember the first thing I encountered. The first one was the Astartes series, but there is not really any dialogue or lore in it. After that, it was the Ultimate Apocalypse mode, but then I went directly for learning the lore. If I remember correctly, the first video I found was Luetin's video on the first Tyrannic War and the invasion of the Tyranids of Tyran and the first battle with the Ultramarines. And so, yeah, it was the Tyranids against the humans, if I remember correctly, because I might be wrong. It has been a long time, and 40K has become such an entrenched topic in my mind that by this point it is just all the same thing. I don't have what I learned before, after, at what point. I just have 40K in my brain.
Okay. Well, so you went from learning English for 40K to becoming what is kind of seen as a bit of a lore master at this point.
It is a self-prophetic title, but yeah, people call me that.
I mean, yeah, it is kind of a self-prophetic title, but I'll be honest, you've delved in the videos of yours that I've watched, you've delved very deeply into a lot of topics that honestly you have to search and scour to find some of this information in pretty obscure places. And I'm not just talking about online, but throughout like some very old resource books, very old white dwarfs in some cases, and older novels also. So you've done a lot of that, and you've researched topics such as the Bad Ab War that you're currently producing the series of. And you've also talked about the Rangdan Xenocides and the missing two Primarchs, which you and I have talked at length about. Because
Yes.
your theory is similar to mine, which is utterly different than what is a widely accepted theory out there. You did a video about the Rangdan Xenocides and the two missing Primarchs, and as we are primarily ourselves a heresy-related podcast, the actual lore behind the missing Primarchs is something that I know a lot of people actually pay a lot of attention to, and it definitely is heresy-related. So, if you don't mind, would you go over your theory of the two missing Primarchs with us?
Most certainly. There is actually a little backstory to be given to the concept of the video itself. The Rangdan Xenocide and my answer to the mystery of the missing Primarchs is actually the first real video the channel produced. There was the trailer before that, but it was more a proof of concept than a real video. In fact, it was not even edited by me. All videos after that are edited by me. Even the one where I got the wrong end slide and the editor is another one, but that one it was edited by me too. What I wanted to do with that video when I made it, because by that point I was just known as the funny Italian guy of the Facebook group that talks a lot about lore and memes, was to show people that while I am capable of enjoying memes, making memes, and using my lore knowledge to make funny memes, that I am not stopping at jokes when I make them. And the first topic was chosen, the Rangdan Xenocides and the mystery of the missing Primarchs, because I knew that I could give an answer that is not just a rehashed Reddit theory that the other YouTubers agree with, but actually researching into it, I could give a concrete answer to at least one of the missing Primarchs by the info I could find, because I was not really renowned for being a lore master, more a lore master that is funny, and I wanted to show people that no, I can be extremely serious when it comes to 40K lore and find things that many others might have overlooked. My theory of the missing Primarchs is actually very simple. It goes towards the Rangdang Xenocide for very good reason, especially for hearsay. Various Primarchs give in various books for which sources are all listed in the video, like we do in every video, because all sources are always listed either in the video itself or the description. And the theory itself is pretty much that the two missing Primarchs and their legions fought in the Rangdang Xenocides, the first and the second, because the third, they were gone by that point. But while like many other people have always theorized that they were purged for being traitors because of their names, the Forgotten and the Purged and such, they were purged for growing friendly with Xenos, growing accustomed to chaos, fall into chaos. From everything I saw, I was not really convinced that it was mostly a conclusion you could reach like any other. There was really no pressing evidence to say that any of those theories were right. So when I was speaking with a friend, he told me, oh yeah, there is mentions of at least one of the missing Primarchs during the Rangdang Xenocides. And as I say in the video, I was familiar with the Xenocides, but I have never delved that deep into the Xenocides to actually form a concrete theory. Now, Pio can attest to this because I tried to get his help for other videos, but I ended up just pretty much firing him from being an helper for lore research. Not because he was bad at it, but because I cannot write the videos with my humor and with my level of lore explanations and theories without researching them myself. So even if he researched stuff for me and gave me a rundown, he didn't give me enough information to actually formulate theories that could be true behind it. It is what I try to do. I study the lore to make theories about what could have happened where we don't know the story. And with the Rangdang Xenocides, that came in handy because I came in wanting to answer the question of one of them, and I ended up solving both of them, if you look at my point of view. Pretty much the entire story is that the two missing legions deployed with one of the missing Primarchs into the Rangdang Xenocides. Not the first one, because the first one was only Dark Angels and members of Battlefleet Solar and the auxiliary forces fighting against the first true war against the Rangdans at Advex Morse, of all places, that will later be used in the Heresy 2 and will be attacked with the contingent of Dark Angels left on it. But they were mostly involved in the second Rangdang Xenocide that, as a parallel with the Punic Wars, was the biggest and bloodiest one, with 300,000 Space Marines deployed at the height of the conflict and 3 Primarchs fighting at the head of their legions. So it was not really a small war to be talked about. It is no bad war, that is for sure. But seeing the info given, all the testimonies of other Primarchs about the missing Primarchs, the timeline of when the legions disappeared, where they deployed, which legions surpassed which one because of losses, but strange numbers of recruits were involved too. I made the theory that the second Primarch, known as the Purged, was the one that deployed with his legion against the Rangdang Xenocides in the second Rangdang Xenocides going forward. And they pretty much got not really corrupted, but infected from a disease or a virus, we could say, brought by the Rangdang Seraph Wars, that is explained in the codexes that cover the Rangdang Wars, that they have no cure for it. All they had to do was exterminatus until it was done, killing everybody that was infected. So if Primarchs were deployed during the second Rangdang Xenocides and 300,000 Space Marines were fighting on many fronts against the Rangdans, it means that the Legion, one of the missing legions, at least should have been deployed there, and it is there that their Primarch died. Most probably he was infected by the disease of the Rangdan Seraph Wars, and as the Emperor knew no cure for it, and most probably seeing how the Rangdan behaved, it was probably a more advanced version of mind control, seeing the colors they used, I think the only alternative he really had was killing the Primarch and purging the elements of the Legion that were infected with it. The rest of what was left either sent to their deaths or mind-wiped and sent to the Ultramarines as new recruits and new members of the Legions. That would explain why they grew so much during the Rangdan Wars that they surpassed the Dark Angels, even if the Dark Angels were seriously suffering heavy losses. The other Primarch instead was a bit more hard to pinpoint, because the Purge, it is a name given to something that the Imperium fought and killed, because why would you call the Primarch the Purged unless the Purged was killed by the Emperor? But there is also to say that the Forgotten wasn't really a name that could mean anything. It could mean everything and anything. What really led me to understand what was happening was mostly the connections in timeline that there was, but also the jokingly, because I don't think it is a joke, because it is considered an official lore source, about the Solar Auxilia, the Solar Auxilia pamphlet that had the Rangdan Wars explained on it, where it was described that they will be deploying with the 2nd and 11th Legions. The point is, the Legions existed even without their Primarchs. So the 2nd was for sure there, because there is no other way. Because even because by timeline, Fulgrim knew the 2nd. He said so himself. And it will make no sense that the Legion will deploy alone. So by that time in the timeline, as they don't exist anymore after the 2nd Rangdan Genocide, the 2nd Primarch could have only died there with the Legion. But the 11th was a stranger matter. And my theory pretty much was cemented about what had happened with him not really ever being found, or if he was found, he was in such a condition he could not really be put in command of anything by that point, came from the comment of Horus that Horus had during his coma when he was struck down by pretty much by the actions of the fucking fucker Erebus, and he was corrupted. And it was that he actually reached in a dream the capsule of the 11th Primarch before they were scattered through the warp before the Great Crusade began, and that his comment was not that all of his efforts will be in vain, that he will be forgotten, that he will be wiped out. His comment was, as I cite in the video, that they will never come to pass. It is a specific kind of events. It is not that something will happen and will be forgotten. It is something that should have happened, will never happen. It is a different context. And from there I understood that if the 11th Legion was purged there too, and it is improbable that it was for the same reason of the 2nd, as once they learned that Marines and Primarchs could be infected by this disease, they will not send somebody to fight it until they find a way to avoid it. What I think is that the Legion deployed there, but they didn't have their Primarch by that point. As we know, the last Primarch, we could say, that was confirmed was Alfarius. There is even events around the Rangdan Genocides in the Alfarius book. But the theory that came from the comment Horus made was that the Primarch, when he was scattered through the warp, landed in the territory of the Rangdan Genocides, that was pretty much at the border of the Ghoul Stars, and he was either found and slain by the Rangdans, or he was found, taken prisoner, and then made a slave with one of the slave collars the Rangdans used. That theory could lead only to two conclusions, even if I say only one in the video, because the other one I actually theorized later, seeing some comments mentioning it, and that was that the 11th Primarch was killed on the battlefield fighting against the Imperium because he was part of the armies of drone slaves the Rangdans were throwing against the Astartes at all times to try and slow them down and annihilate them, like they did in the first Rangdan Genocide. But later it came also out that there is the theory of Subject 11, that could be the 11th Primarch, but that could connect to my theory too, because if he was not killed, he was maimed mentally to a point that maybe could not be possible to break the control of the Rangdans, and he was just imprisoned until they could find a cure to bring him back to full mental health enough to reform his Legion, because the Legion was not the most important part, the Primarch was. So the Legion could be broken down, but the Primarch was invaluable, because good luck remaking him without the technology and time. But with the events of the Horus Heresy, the Crusade of Ullanor and such, the Emperor was so busy, like it happened with the prototype Primarch or Primarch Zero, the Angel, that he simply didn't have the time to bring on his plans, and the 11th simply was left either a mindless husk or still a slave of a race that doesn't exist any longer. But still, even if that is the theory that could be closer to the truth, it still connects to my theory that he was there during the Rangdan genocides and that the Rangdans are the reasons he disappeared together with the second.
Okay. And your video goes into a lot more depth on this.
Yes.
And I've watched it, I think, 2 or 3 times at this point, just because it's a good listening. And I'll be honest, your voice is, really cool. So your theory entire being that the Rangdan basically killed or enslaved him, what do you believe actually occurred to him upon enslavement? Do you think that he was just one of the myriad mooks murdered by the Dark Angels or whichever legion was fighting them? Or do you believe that he was one of the ones that I guess was just murdered by the Rangdan in that case? Which way do you actually think makes the most sense to you?
It really depends from the context. As I explained in the video when I explained the first Rangdan genocide, the Rangdans might seem mindless, but they were actually extremely intelligent, at least in strategy, and they had a sense of honor, as showed when they didn't retreat when the first Legion forces that were fighting during the first Rangdan genocides broke through their lines and pretty much faced them head to head, blade to blade. At that point, they were too proud to retreat and ended up dying for it. What I think happened is that he either was found by Rangdan troops, he started fighting like it would happen, like, I don't know, with Vulcan that killed a salamander, or that Perus Manus that killed a Necron construct and became the most stereotypical fucking Primarch ever, named Ferrus Manus, that is Latin for Iron Hands. He had Iron Hands, and his legion is the Iron Hands. So, what I think happened is either he fought against the Rangdans and seeing it as an insult that one single being could keep their own forces on, they fought until they killed him. Or they saw the potential this warrior had to be a good slave, fought him until they submitted him, and then enslaved him with one of the slave collars. Now, the slave collars the Rangdans used were pretty advanced technology, more advanced than the Imperium, really. It was not the kind like you will see in Fallout, where you have explosive collars that can detonate at any moment. They were most probably, because it is not really explained in detail, neural collars that connected probably directly to the nervous system of the person and pretty much locked them inside their mind, and their bodies will just obey any kind of order they were given. They were pretty much really meat puppets when they got that collar. And what I think is either enslaved and used as a normal drone, maybe leading his own forces and such, or being given a higher position than normal slaves. But seeing as the Rangdan were pretty much mixing slaves of various Xenos races with humans and such, and using them as forced labor, meat shield, and rogue army to attack the Astartes and try and slow them down, I really don't see them respecting his abilities enough to give him a preferential treatment. So he most probably was one of their most elite gladiators, we could say, more really a mind slave, but they really didn't have that much regard for him as they would with their own Rangdans. So he was probably just thrown at some point against the Imperium, try and break havoc until the main force and the war moons of the Rangdans could make short work of whatever they were fighting against. And at that point, he either faced another legion, finding this probably giant warrior charging at them that looked like a human and was pretty much the size of a Primarch, went, oh shit, they have a Primarch, and started shooting. he fought against his own legion, and they either had to put him out of his misery because they couldn't stop him, or they actually managed to stop him and wound him enough to bring him down, and then gave him to the Emperor. But that signed pretty much their hand, because the Emperor couldn't really let out that the Primarchs could be defeated, enslaved, or infected with diseases. For the stage the Imperium was in at the moment, where they were still building their forces, their domain, conquering planets, the Imperium was really not cemented in stone. It was not until after the Horus Heresy and the horrors of it that the Imperium really started to be set in stone, because all the rogue elements had already sided with Horus and they were being killed off. But by that point, if it came out, and it is actually the theory as to why they were purged, that I even explain in my video, if it came out that the giant warlord that was sending his own superhuman sons and superhuman weapons to submit them, either with force or diplomacy, that left them with no standing army to fight against him, that destroyed their cities, killed their families and such in every engagement for an empire that many didn't want actually anything to do with. There were people that simply wanted to be left alone, and the Emperor went, no, you are not going to be left alone. Now, imagine if you actually learn at some point that those superhuman Primarchs, those demigods generals the Emperor created, that you have even not seen wounded, can actually be killed. Imagine what would happen. The Horus Heresy would have been earlier of probably a couple of centuries. Not with the Primarchs involved, most probably it depends, but the Imperium would have fractured for sure and erupted into a civil war the Emperor really couldn't afford at that moment.
Okay. That's definitely a very interesting way of looking at it and thinking about it.
Mostly because we are dealing with the pre-Ullanor Imperium, where the Imperium was, not really debatably, but was at the height of their power after defeating the Beast of Ullanor and fucking creating Armageddon. I don't think the people of Armageddon are very happy of it, because it keeps getting assaulted by fucking orcs. But yeah, this is pretty much the Imperium in its pre-infancy, and I wouldn't be surprised if the 300,000 Space Marines fighting in the Rangdang Genocides by that point, for the time period, the dates are all in the video, so you can see that it is long before even the conclusion of the Great Crusade. I wouldn't be surprised if the 300,000 Space Marines fighting in the Rangdang Genocides were almost all of their Space Marine forces by that point.
That would make some sense. That would make some sense indeed.
I mean, well, yeah. And I mean, like, with the numbers that the Dark Angels reportedly lost during the Xenocide, too, I mean, like, that was the big legion until that point.
Yep. Now that'd be an interesting theory. Could the Rangdon stuff actually have worked on the AI or Mechanicum robots, like the Thanatar or the Thalax that has a human brain in it?
Well, dozens of Titan legions were obliterated by the war, so it is most probable that, yes, their machine spirits were enslaved at some point.
Interesting. So the Rangdon absolutely would have had something that would be able to counter a Titan. And that
Well,
right
they had war moons, so I don't think even an Imperator class Titan could have any kind of chance against it. Like during the first Rangdang Genocide, the Dark Angels had to sacrifice a Gloriana class battleship that pretty much landed inside one of these war moons and detonated his plasma reactor, forming a miniature sun of plasma just to put one out of commission.
Yeah.
When the second Rangdang Genocide started, dozens of those arrived. So
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you had entire multiple night houses and Titan legions involved in it that disappeared, essentially. So,
That's I definitely have missed that about the Ragnar Xenocides. That's definitely something different.
It's for me. I mean, it's not part of the heresy. It's pre-heresy, yes, but like, there's a lot of interesting stuff that happens during it, but it's not very well. I mean, it's not like openly documented. You know, you have to go really hunting for it.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I really like about a lot of the lore is that you can go hunting as deep down some of these rabbit holes as you want, and you'll keep finding more and more tidbits that lead to other tidbits that lead to other tidbits. And you can try to find the real story, but so many of these stories don't actually have ends.
Yeah,
And
but the best thing you can do is learn the outlook of every faction involved, learn the context. What I really try to reinforce with people is that without being given proper context, you cannot really understand the ins and out of stories. And it is why I approached the Rangdang Xenocides and the Mystery of the Missing Primarchs in a different way, because while other YouTubers were reading the wikis and doing their own theories that had really no head to tail to exist, were making things up. Like I even this was my first experience seeing the misinformation the YouTubers of 40k actually brought around in the community, because there were people like commenting under my video going, oh yeah, but Oculus Imperia said that the deletion of the missing Primarchs was actually a technological virus released by the Rangdan. And I was like, where the fuck did he read that? I scoured all the material on them. Where did he find that? And it is a thing that is happening more and more often as I do more and more research in various topics, that the people come and tell me, oh yeah, but this guy said this, and I just have to answer, mate, there is nothing written about it. He made it up. And the Ragnar Xenocides really proved a challenge for myself, because by that point I was learning lore, but I really didn't delve that much into the mysteries of it. And I chose it as our first video because it was a personal challenge for me to try and understand what had happened without having the entire situation explained to me, only using my general outlook on 40k factions, what I knew of the Emperor, the Primarchs, the mentality of the Imperium and such. And I think, even because it is getting a lot of traction on Reddit, on various Reddits, that we are actually the first ones to deliver a new answer to the mystery of the missing Primarchs, but also doing it with probable proof. What I mean by probable proof is that with the context we are given, with the phrases, comments made by other Primarchs, with the actions and the way some of them explained certain events, it is either we are either right or the writers are really wrong, because the narrative they have built all points to the answer we gave. If we are right or wrong now, that is debatable, because we will probably never know, and I'm sure if Games Workshop writes the lore now, they will fuck it up in some way. But with the context we are given now, and with all the clues we are given now, I don't think there is really any other probable answer to what happened to them than the one we gave. And I think that is for multiple reasons. One of them might be because some of the books we use that had the references to them are very recent, like the ninth book, Black Book of the Horus Heresy, is 2020, so it is very recent. But the older theories really shouldn't be parroted when new information comes out, because theories are theories, they can change. But with the context and info we have the moment that video was made, I think the only answers we really have are those presented in the video. But it is not really even arrogance, it is just how I see it, because we are missing context of everything, and we are missing context to find any other answer. Like, they were corrupted by chaos, yeah, but from how the Primarchs explain it, it is not really what it seems. Oh yeah, they betrayed the Imperium. Yeah, but none of them are talking of them in a way that they were traitors. They mentioned the word victim and tragedy many times. Like, yep. So yeah.
I want to say in this part, John is making a very excellent point. about how Duncan is horrible, and how Duncan is going to become an Ultramarines player because Duncan wants to be on the right side of history, and how we have the moral high ground on everything because we have Ultramarines armies. Dan is seconding this, and Jamie is taking notes because he's too is going to sell off his Dark Angels and buy an Ultramarines army, or we're having technical difficulties, and I'll be splicing us back in the conversation once we get it figured out.
Yeah. So we had a bit of a recording snafu there. So sorry if this bit sounds a bit disjointed, folks. But I think everything's good. And unfortunately, Dan has left us for the evening as well. Where were we? John, you and Danny were talking about the weird bits of lore.
Yeah, I was saying my favorite goofy old lore is back when the Inquisition was helped out by Obi-Wan Sherlock Clouseau, was the Ultramarines and the Ultramarines. The Inquisition couldn't figure out which one was the actual first founding chapter / legion, and so they had them have an old all-out knockdown, drag-out, full-on chapter war between the two different spellings just to figure out who was the original. And that goes back to the old goofy 40K when Lehman Russ was just a guard general and Horus was just an uppity guy that the Emperor knew one day. And so you've got to kind of be a little careful when you're doing some of the research, and that you've almost got to have a cutoff of at least second edition 40K to make sure that there's some established lore. And even then, there's been changes to some of that. I know Black Templars changed some with they'd now kind of like astropaths and things like that. So you've got a lot of changes that have come up.
It depends really from where you want to look at it, because the lore that gets changed usually, unless you're talking about very recent lore that has been butchered completely, but usually lore changes that were made in the past were made to either fix events that made no sense, or flesh out entire conflicts or characters or entire stories, or revamp entire factions. Like it is more of a question of which retcons should we consider canon and which one we should not. Like the retcon of Varro Tigorius until 8th edition of 40K, Varro Tigorius, the chief librarian of the Ultramarines, didn't exist. There was another one in 7th edition, their chief librarian, that was an Alfeldar Astarti, that was the fucking chief librarian. And obviously when people started asking, excuse me, what the fuck there is an Alfeldar human turned Astartes in a Space Marine chapter and is considered part of an empire that is literally as xenophobic as killing people for it? What the fuck will they accept him? And they quietly retconned him out for Varro Tigorius.
Well, then on top of that, they had that weird part of xenology where they talked about the Eldar breeding habits, and I'm just like, y'all really wanted that to happen. I don't know why, but y'all really wanted that to happen.
Yeah, there's some strange stuff that went on in the lore way back in the day that has kind of been retconned into new stuff, and some of it hasn't, and there's still weird stuff out there. Like the fact that gene sealer cults used to actually be chaos driven.
Yep. So were Necrons. They were chaos androids.
Yeah. Yeah, and we still don't know much about the Men of Iron and what all went on with them, except if you go back to, I think it was either the first or the second Gaunt's Ghosts book, we find out stuff that Dan Abnett put in there about them crawling like Necron style, half-formed Necrons crawling out of corrupted STC to create the Men of Iron.
Not really. Like it is explained in various novels that even technology can be corrupted by chaos. Yep. AI can be corrupted by chaos. And I explained in my video on the Catalexis Heresy and the Cacodominus, where the theory at the end of that video is that the Cacodominius wasn't actually an alien, but was an AI controlling a psychic alien. There was a class of Titan, the first real Titan, if we go by what he said, the Castigator class Titan in one of the books of the Grey Knights, and it is explained that it was created during the Dark Age of Technology. It is unknown if he fought for the machines or not, but it was lost in the warp and ended up being corrupted by chaos. And when the Imperium arrived and found it, he started attacking humans again with weapons that pretty much were shooting demons. And so, yeah, what most probably happened with the Men of Iron is either that the humanity was becoming too stable and too advanced to really be destroyed, so they attacked the Men of Iron and corrupted them. Because we know STCs weren't corrupted as an AI, because STCs by themselves, the standard template constructors, were AIs. Pretty much the problem is that there is a detachment from AI to AI. What I mean is the STCs were created by humans, but the Men of Iron were created by the STCs. There is no really loyalty to be had. There is no creator and creation relationship between Men of Iron and humans. There is a creator relationship between Men of Iron and STC. And what really happened is, being that the AIs of the Men of Iron were AIs created by other AIs, as the STCs were the ones creating them, they were easier to corrupt and turn against the humans, most probably as they were machines that worked mostly on logic and not really on emotion. They were showed what would happen, probably like it happened with Horus, the events of the Imperium of Man, the Dark Ages of humanity and such, chaos consuming everything, and they simply decided, like the Necrons did, that if chaos is powerful because organic life with emotions exist, it is time to end organic life with emotions, and they turned against their own creators. But the STCs never betrayed humanity. They can be corrupted by chaos, but every STC that was found, either intact or not, unless it was made hostile directly from humanity, like it happened with the ship that at 4 a.m. I cannot remember the name of, the Spirit of Eternity, or the Will of Eternity. No, the Will of Eternity was the Blackstone Fortress. This was the Spirit of Eternity.
That was in the Priest's book. It was like the Mechanicum trilogy.
Yeah, the Spirit of Eternity, the ship that traveled back in time from the beginning and the end of the universe, and where chaos consumed everything and was lost in the warp and ended up in the Imperium. The STC on board, the humans on board, weren't really enemies. In fact, there was a bond between the STC and the captain of the ship that, when broken, when the captain was killed under torture by the Mechanicus, when the Mechanicus went and explored the ship and such, the AI, when it woke up, turned directly against them, but not because they were humans and he wanted to kill them, but because one, he was completely disgusted by what humanity had become, because he called the humans masters, but what he had in front of him were more like monkeys. They were not really something he would even respect or consider a human. And second, because they had killed his captain, and he was pretty pissed about it. So he destroyed the entire research station, annihilated an entire Mechanicus fleet that tried to stop it in minutes, and then fled into the warp.
Yep. The weirdness. It all fits in.
So yeah, the problem with the corruption of the Men of Iron is that the logic can actually be understood. The problem that happened mostly, I think, is that it created really a rift how they were created between humans and the AIs of the Men of Iron. Because the STCs were created by humans, but the STCs, unless they are corrupted by chaos, a thing that you don't even have to agree with to happen, as we have seen more than once, unless they were corrupted by chaos, they were always friendly with humans. The things that turned against humans were the AIs of the Men of Iron, pretty much their warriors, their mechanical warriors, because they were created by other AIs. They didn't have really any kind of feelings for humanity. They were more like masters, but not really. They were not respecting humanity. They were just obeying its orders because they were programmed to obey its orders. When they saw what obeying the orders probably would have brought into, with chaos consuming everything and such, and probably they were lied to by chaos as usual, fucking Erebus. But they just decided that, then humans have to go. Humans went into a panic, started destroying all of their own AIs, comprising even the STCs, because the STCs was destroyed during the cybernetic revolt, because humans feared they will turn on themselves too. And other than that, the STCs that weren't destroyed still stayed loyal throughout the Men of Iron rebellion and with humans. And we can see that from the Interex, like the Mark IV power armor that we have seen Astartes wear in the Horus Heresy and such, was a pattern that was derived from an STC data memory recovered from the planet of the Interex, where a fully functioning STC was still producing technology and weapons to try and stop the Imperium from conquering the Interex. So,
Yep, that's something that's not really thought about or brought up, and it's something that a lot of people have missed.
in fact, when Astartes started fighting the Interex, they actually noticed that, how do these people on a single planet have power armors very similar, if not almost identical to ours? Like, how? And they started losing ground and losing ground and losing ground. More and more Marines died deploying against the Interex, because the Interex simply had a superior card. They had a fully functioning, still loyal to humanity because they were never enemies, STC working for them and producing the technology to try and stop the Imperium. The fact that it couldn't was simply probably due to the limitations of time, resources, because the Interex were like very small compared to the Imperium. The Imperium was pretty much throwing thousands of Astartes at them. There is a limit you can reach. You can have all the technology you want. If you don't have the hands to wield it, good luck with that. But the Interex were still scared from AI and using the Men of Iron. In fact, they were humans in power armor. They weren't robots fighting against the Imperium. And so, there is really no indication the STCs ever went rogue. Instead, the Men of Iron did. And it's probably because there is this detachment. STCs were created by humans. The Men of Irons were created by STCs. So the Men of Iron were loyal to the STCs, their creator, while the STCs were loyal to humans. So the STCs never betrayed. The Men of Iron did.
And there you go.
That is very interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way. But yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, no, I hadn't thought about it that way at all. But that's...
I always thought it was a little weird that like the only way that we've ever kind of modeled them was just men that are iron, kind of bipedal and boring. So I always, whenever I have like NPCs and things like that where I'm using Men of Iron, I try to use other things that are outside of GW lines, like the Horizon Zero Dawn. I kind of like those designs and things like that for if I'm trying to just throw in more random NPCs that could be Men of Iron or could be other older races.
Yeah, that was absolutely something I hadn't even thought of, and the fact that Danny brought it up is kind of a tangent. Kudos, brother. That was very well thought out, and it seemed and felt kind of off the cuff. But hey, this is why you're one of the people that I refer to, and I know others refer to as a lore expert. So thank you for that.
New idea for a video.
Well, there you go. Well, I know we are running a little bit longer for our video or our audio recording tonight. And I know it's definitely late where you are. So do we all want to call it here? And
no, I think we can stay another half an hour if Pio is available for it. Because he has a lot of funny stories with how I presented to him some of my ideas. It is more like because from what you hear in the video, you can imagine like my ideas are all presented in order with a content. Pio is there when I formulate some of my theories, some of my ideas, some of my videos and such, and he can say that it's more like a Joe Rogan experience with me explaining theories in the most incomprehensible way possible and telling him do they make sense, and he just goes yes.
Okay.
That's kind of how I got one of my buddies into 40K.
Yes, sometimes he calls me, say, Pio, start talking for 2 hours. I say, yes, Danny, yes.
Okay. Well, tell us a couple Danny stories then, Pio.
I mean, he introduced me to Warhammer because we started knowing each other a long time ago. He didn't even know Warhammer at the end of the day. So one day he calls me and asks me, do you know Warhammer? And unfortunately, I said no. He started send me videos of 4 hours. It's I don't want to watch them, but he forced me to. When in the trailer we said that I learned the Warhammer 40k lore by standing near him. That was not a joke.
So he literally trapped you there and made you watch videos about 40k.
Yes, I didn't want to.
The story of he learned the lore against his own will is only slightly exaggerated.
He injected Warhammer 40k lore into my brain without my will. And now I started liking it.
I didn't get permission, but I did all the
But are you enjoying the lore?
Now, yes. At the beginning, it was mental torture.
Logs. It sounds like 40k.
Yeah. I mean, it can feel like 40k at times. What is your favorite? What's your favorite faction in the lore?
Or maybe the Imperium or the Necrons. More like the Necrons.
Okay, so you're a Necron fan. Inside the Imperium, what faction do you prefer? Chapter, etc. I know in the videos you've talked about the Lamenters a bit.
I love the Lamenters, but my personal favorite is the Imperial Fists.
Yeah, the Lamenters and my boys is more of a joke. It's not really the preference of Pio.
I like them.
He likes them like every other fan likes the Lamenters, but they are far from his favorite. They are not even the same Descendant Legion from his favorite. So
okay,
we were kind of figuring it was the Legion doesn't pick you, or you don't pick your Legion. The Legion picked you. So I always joke that I'm an Ultramarines player, but
imagine how much your life must fucking suck if you're taken and chosen by the word bearers. Fucking Christ, that is a great prospect.
Ooh. So the reason I picked my first Legion was Iron Warriors, because I fell in love years and years ago with stories of trench warfare and siege warfare, and that just really was something that I paid a lot of attention to. And then I got the original Chaos Codex, and hey, this is what these guys are absolutely all about. So it really was a big thing for me, and I was like, yeah, Iron Warriors, love this. But no, I don't think that, not knocking Wordbearer players, but yeah, I don't think that I could really ever be attracted to anything that they have put out or would put out. They just kind of.
I mean, I think the existence of Erebus pretty much killed any interest any other person could have in the fucking Legion.
Yeah, I mean, Erebus, it's fucking Erebus. Fucking Erebus.
The only character I hate more than Erebus is fucking Erda, because it makes Games Workshop seem almost based with how her story went, but in the end, it was Erebus that killed Erda, so...
Erda was a weird retcon that I never saw coming. I never saw that.
I actually think that they wanted to retcon it to have, more of a female presence into the entire tragedy of the Horus Heresy, but they retconned it in a way that is so fucking dumb that they ended up making her directly responsible for the downfall of the Imperium and the Dark Ages of humanity. Like, this single woman could not accept that the Emperor wanted to use her genetically perfect and born super soldier children to do super soldier children stuff, and decided to scatter them into literal hell inside space, hoping that wherever they landed, they could have a decent life. The only one she was actually correct about was Gilliman. All the others ended up in fucking hellholes that created some of the worst monsters humanity ever saw, like Kurz, like Lorgar, like Angron, even if Angron was not really his choice and such. All because she couldn't accept that their father might actually have a fucking point when he says that humanity needs to take the stars if they want to survive. And like, I was like, when I first saw that retcon, I was like, what the fuck? Did they want to try and seem like misogynists or what? Because they made her responsible for everything. And if my theory is actually true, one of her children actually arrived in the territory of one of the most objectively violent and evil Xenos races to ever exist, and didn't even have the time to form his first thoughts long enough until he was mentally enslaved by them.
I mean, good idea.
It is grimdark, but I don't think they actually wanted it to be grimdark. And that's like, how can you fuck up your own retcon so much that you literally shift the blame from the Emperor to another character for the Horus Heresy? Like, what the fuck?
No, I've always been of the opinion of the Imperial that Big E was always just a really shitty dad, and I stand by that statement. That's the hill I'm gonna die on. He's still.
Yeah, he was not a good dad, but their mother really was an idiot. Oh yeah, I don't want my children to become monsters. Let me throw them into literal hell. Let's see what happens. How the fuck do you think things will go?
In those cases.
Oh no, I don't want my sons to be tyrant. Chaos gods, can you do that? What the fuck?
Yeah.
Look, this daycare is really mean. How about Jeffrey Dahmer?
There's not much you can really say about that.
And actually, this kind of situation has many parallels that I'm seeing also in the Badab War. Now, studying the lore for the Badab War has ended up being almost an obsession. Like, when I decided to get into it, I didn't expect that things could spiral this much out of control. Like, I'm a pretty busy person normally. I still study, I learn new things. Like, I'm learning to 3D model for productions, for like movies, video games and such, and I work all the time. I manage the Facebook group. I have to study the lore, then I have to write the scripts, record the video, edit it. Sometimes we end up with Pio taking pretty much entire days just to stay there and edit. There was like the Rangdang Xenocide video. We started editing it at I think like 2 p.m. We didn't stop until it was 4 a.m. of the next day, like to edit it in a well way, because I make the edits. Pio's just stays there, helps me with the script, keeping tracks of where we are and giving me suggestions for edits and such, and funny things that could happen and funny effects that could be there. In fact, there is even a little spoiler I want to give, because I don't know when this will be uploaded, but if it is late enough, it will not be a spoiler at all, because the episode will already be out. But for part 3, the Badab War series is being liked by so many people because it is extremely accurate to what is written, all the while giving the backstory of everything that is needed to understand certain situations. That I was approached by an artist for Warhammer 40k quality fan arts. I will not say the name yet because he will be credited, and I have seen some of the drafts already. But he's making artworks for part 3 that show for the first time ever fanon or official artworks certain events that took place during the Badab War. Some duels and such, because there were some artworks that actually retracted some of the events, but I started looking at them and I found so many mistakes that I was like, no, I don't think this is the situation that it is describing, because it doesn't fit with the artwork. And the Badab War has taken up so much of my mental space that pretty much I'm now in a rush until you end at part 4, so just so I can fucking close the wiki page of the Badab War, because I opened it for the first time 2 months ago. I haven't closed it since. I'm always there, double checking info, checking sources, seeing the mistakes the wikis are making, because if you see in Badab War Part 1, I call out some of the most egregious mistakes Lexicanon made. In Part 2, I call out only one. In Part 3, at the moment, there is none. But for the simple fact that I started finding so many fucking mistakes in like 12 pages of wikis that I started to notice that they were literally describing destroying the flow of the video. It was like, I'm explaining lore, mistake. I'm explaining lore, mistake. Like, it became a hell, a personal hell. And I decided to just put them on hold. I explained the biggest one in part 2, that there was another chapter master missing from the notable members of the Astral Clause, and I pretty much moved them all to part 4 at the end, where there will be an event that I decided to nominate as Lexicanum Light Festival, where I will go across every single mistake the wikis have on the Badab War. But other than that, I actually started to notice that many of the info given around, not only by the wikis, but also by other YouTubers, are factually wrong. Like, I started finding out more about Tiberos more in detail, and I found out everything surrounding him is pretty much false from the narratives I've seen from other YouTubers like Major Kills and such. I started finding out a bit more the details about the events, like how Euron got wounded at the end of the war and became Euron Blackheart. Really, because this is a bit of a spoiler, but the Badab War is a very old topic. At the end of the Badab War, Euron gets shot with a melta gun, a combi bolter melta. This will be at the end of part 3, and if you go to my channel, you can see it already as it is used as the part 2 thumbnail. That there is a oh my god, I forgot the name of the chapter. It is 4 a.m. Anyway, but Euron is charging at a marine that is going to shoot him with a melta gun. The concept behind it is wrong, because the situation is not really how it is being presented there. The commander was believed dead by Euron, that was pretty much standing over him to gloat. He was dying, he was for really dying, but he pretty much turned around immediately and shot him with the Melta directly against his power claw, and it wasn't the Melta that actually tore away his arm and part of his chest. The Melta hit the power claws. The energy fields around the power claws went nuts because it received pretty much the equivalent of a small sun of energy against it. Exploded, and with it exploded half of the body of Euron. That is actually what happened. But when you go and look at even at the wikis, if I remember right, because I didn't actually read that part on the wikis, I went directly to the source. But when you hear other YouTubers, the narrative is always, oh yeah, he was shot with a melta gun by a captain, and he was wounded like that. And I'm like, that's not really what happened. And it is pretty much a mental torture by this point, because for how I work, I don't start a project I know I can't finish. So when I started the Badab War, I thought that maybe part 2 will be the longest. Maybe it will come out at a total, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours. First part was 50 minutes. The second is almost 2 hours. For how much I wrote for part 3, it will be probably between 3 and 3.5 hours. And then you have part 4, that is the aftermath, where I have to go and study the end of the codexes of the Badab War, and then go and read different short stories, novels, go and do research into some factions that really not much is known about. All the while I spend my time researching the music, sounds effect to use, the artworks to use. And yeah, I really wasn't made for this level of dedication to a single series, especially with so much misconception about events, characters, and such around it. And actually, there were some comments in part 1 and 2 that stuck with me, that said that, oh yeah, other YouTubers that I've seen cover these events, other series I followed, actually left out many of the fuck-ups of the loyalist side, like the firebombing of Sacristan and such, where the loyalists pretty much did things that were worse than the secessionists and traitors. And yeah, people, once again, when they watch other channels and such, when they watch other lore masters, so-called in some cases lore masters, end up missing context that is really important to understand, that the Badab War itself mirrors the heresy to a certain point. The heresy happened because of the ambition of Horus, that seeing what the Imperium will become, and most especially the fact that all their sacrifice of half of the Primarchs would be forgotten, because he saw the statues of the Imperial Palace and he noticed that even his was missing. He decided, for his pride, that if the Emperor couldn't have the Imperium, then it was either him or no one. And the heresy started because of that, because of the pride of Horus in wanting to be the master of humanity and wanting to be remembered and appreciated. And when you actually go and look, even watching my videos, even in part 1, you can understand that Euron is as ambitious as Horus was. The problem in this case is that Chaos is not really that involved in the events of the Badab War. There is some elements, because it is believed that they tried to tamper with some events. But the entire story of the Badab War is the Imperium fucking up so monumentally that they ended up creating an enemy out of probably one of the best Astartes to ever be created inside the Imperium of Men. Because as I explained during even the first 2 parts, even the third one, like there is a part where I say it plainly, like they are fighting a losing war, but Euron is still a monster. You don't go against him expecting to survive, either in battle or even in tactics. But the Imperium just needed to accomplish one single task. Fucking listen to him. Like, not even on the plan, because I don't know if anybody here saw the Badab War Part 1, not even in the plan where he wanted to conquer the Maelstrom, but the main request that brought Euron to madness was that his forces were stretched so thin after one of the chapters of the Warders was removed, that he wanted a 4th chapter to be put back into the Warders. It is what he wanted the most, because they were fighting a losing battle against Chaos. They stopped. They couldn't advance anymore. They didn't have the troops to do it. It is what pushed him to exceed the limit of the Codex Astartes. The fact that he didn't have enough men to fight, to coordinate his duties. And that was because the Imperium recalled away one of the 4 chapters of the Warders and never replaced it. Left just 3, the Lamentas, the Mantis Warriors, and the Astral Claws. And pretty much the Imperium send them there for a mission that was pacify the region. They started doing it. They were sent there because things were getting out of hand. And when they started achieving something, the Imperium took away one of the chapters and pretty much brought them back to square one. They didn't have enough forces to keep control. And for that, Euron started to become resentful of the Imperium, because the Imperium simply didn't collaborate. There wasn't even a dialogue. The envoys Euron was sending to Terra weren't even being listened to. Like they were explaining the problem that there were in the Maelstrom zone, but the Imperium simply dismissed the problem, like they had done when they had sent them there, because the Warders were created after the fall of Cygnus. A single planet fell in the Maelstrom zone, and months of travel of space collapsed with it. And the Imperium went, fuck, we need those territories, and send them there. And everything started from that. And then you see the entire war, and understand that the Imperium could have simply sent a fucking chapter and avoided all of this. But instead decided to anger Euron and his pride and ego so much that he turned renegade, because he's not really Chaos. Euron is Chaos by association. He's more of a renegade. He doesn't give a fuck about Chaos. He wants just to make the Imperium pay. But they still had dozens of chapters to throw at him when he went rogue. They couldn't just give him one to help him, but they had dozens to throw at him.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because in the part 2, there is even a joke that Pio makes that he will suffer the brunt for. Like I always write Pio as Pio is always written as a character in the videos as a double-edged sword. Like he is the unfunny victim that is made funny by suffering, and at the same time. and at the same time, is an insert for the audience. He makes the questions that might come to mind to people. He asks me to go deeper into some topics so that I can explain things better and give more context. But even him, when I wrote a joke for him in part 2 that is actually a very clever joke, because he makes a joke that is, with this many chapters involved in the war, we can just call the war a book, and there is the badums, and then there is the crickets, because it is a very bad dad joke. Then there is a little. No, then there is a little sequel to the little joke that is when the Minotaurs arrive and he goes, it has now evolved from a book to an encyclopedia, and he gets hit by a pen that I throw, and pretty much that is a clever joke, at least in my opinion, because I wrote it. But because when you think about it, Euron was moving all the time just to establish an empire. He wanted to conquer the Maelstrom and bring it to pacification. Yes, for his own drive, ambition, ego, we could call it. But in the end, it would benefit the Imperium. He would be seen as an hero. And he will be happy with that, but still, he would have formed what is pretty much a second Ultramar if he got what he wanted. But instead, because the Imperium simply preferred to dismiss one of their most capable commanders living in a literal war zone where he really was fighting to keep things in order and keep the Imperium happy and united and the people there, because it was not simply just fighting, it was reforming everything. It was building defenses, creating armies. He was... circumventing some rules that he shouldn't have, but at that
not
point,
paying his taxes.
Yeah, then there is the part that arrived for not paying taxes. But if you look into it in part 2, I explain why he didn't. It wasn't that he didn't want to send out the material. It was that they were coming to scrutinize him, and they would have noticed that there were a bit too many astral claws around. But all that it could have sufficed to end the events of the Badab War was that the Imperium, seeing that things were getting bad again in the Badab sector, said, "Fuck it, send a chapter that doesn't have an home world, establish them there." The end. But no, they didn't. And all of this spiraled from, they are not paying taxes, to part 3, where there is even a part that I wrote for Pio where he's a bit stunned, where they arrive to the point that they start throwing fragments of suns at each other. Like, things have spiraled so much out of fucking control by that point that there is entire stars being thrown against the enemy.
There you go. Well, anyway, unfortunately, I believe at this point we do need to, unfortunately, knock off and call it a night.
I'll say, for all of us, that we definitely go crazy into history and back lore and everything else, and we really enjoy you coming on with us because we really enjoy your videos and obviously the memes as well.
Yes, the memes.
But we really enjoy
the memes, especially.
Going into in depth and everything else that you do. So thank you for coming on tonight.
It's been a special treat for us. Don't want to seem all fanboy, but yeah.
Well, it was actually a fun experience, but I'm always open to discuss 40k lore with people, especially because usually the people I have around have had enough of me discussing 40k lore or are enslaved. Case in point, Pio.
Yeah. We'll see if we can.
I really need help.
No, you're not getting any help. You get to stay there in the basement.
Blink twice if you need us to rescue you.
Yeah, my old coworker decided to be funny, and he downloaded the 40k quiz book back when TW had that app out. He's like, I'll get him this way, and he's like, I just answered every one of them without breaking eye contact. He's like, I don't know what to do anymore. So I'll let him know, Pio, that I just want you to know that you're not the only one that's chained up in horrible places.
Well, we'll try to get you back on another time soon to continue carrying on with more lore.
Whenever you guys want. Maybe at the end of the Badab War, when my mind is finally free to go back to more interesting things like the Abyssal Crusade or the Macarian Crusade.
Okay,
that sounds like a plan.
Indeed, it does.
No, actually, it isn't. It isn't a plan. There is actually a votation still going on the community tab of my channel, where I ask people what they want to see after the Badab War, and for now they chose the Age of Apostasy and the consequences of it. So,
gotcha.
That's not a bad one either.
Awesome.
There's so many interesting things in there.
Yeah, Duncan would probably love the Scouring as well.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. The Scouring. Anything where Ruggel Dorn gets his comeuppance properly, I'm all a fan.
There is actually a scene that is the only part. I will have to insert an annotation in the video when that happens. But there is a scene in part 3 that I already wrote and will be narrated by me and Giulio in parts. That is a moment I don't want to spoil, but it has to do with the executioners. And there is a little dialogue that I wrote for the specific part, because it is probably my favorite part of the entire Bad Up War. It is called the Red Hour. I will not go into detail about what it is, but it is a very interesting event. And there is an entire line that I pretty much made up using Rogal Dorn style of speech, where the commander of the executioners just goes, "In the name of Rogal Dorn, kill them all." Like, very simple, but he starts the Red Hour.
All right, then.
Awesome.
I look forward to it. Anyway, at this point, we're going to call it a night here, everybody. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Danny and Pio, for coming on. We really appreciate it. As always, everyone out there, we hope you enjoyed listening, and we will see you back in episode 97 next week. And as always, I have been Duncan, and tonight I've been joined by my regular co-hosts,
Jack,
Jamie,
And John.
and our two very special guests who are absolutely welcome to have.
Danny, also the Pontius, and Pio, also the guy that lives in the basement.
I can talk,
Who gave you permission to do that?
I think we did by inviting you all on here. Anyway, stay accountable to your friends, stay accountable to yourself, stay accountable to your hobby, and we will catch you all next time.